program, How to Close More Sales. This program was designed by Joe to help you close more sales, overcome your customers' objections, stay off price on the lot, and hold gross. There is also homework and a quick quiz for you to fill out at the completion of each tape in this series. And now, let's begin. Here's Joe.
Welcome back. So far we've talked about identifying your customers' wants and needs. We went through those statistics. We found that almost everybody that is there to buy. We found out what your competition's doing. And we found out that if you skip presentations, demonstrations, you skip sales. We talked about tracking your progress. We tracked opportunities. We tracked activities, presentations, demonstrations. We tracked results. And we did that so that you could set some clear goals for improvement. The next thing we need to talk about are the skills that you need to develop along with your closing skills that'll help you close more sales and overcome more objections. On page 17 in your workbook, developing your selling skills. Now, one of the first things we need to understand, you can listen to this tape and gain information. You will learn things technically. You'll gain knowledge. But there's a difference between knowledge and skills. You can learn some knowledge and gain some information here, but you won't develop a skill just from watching this tape. What do you have to do to develop a skill? You're right, you have to do something. You'll have to go out and practice, drill, and rehearse. How long does it take to develop a skill? Give or take, I heard somebody say 21 days, 30 days, 45 days. Depending on the skill, almost any skill will take you a minimum of 2 weeks to develop, and most are going to take you 30 to 60 days to develop, especially big skills like closing, big skills like objections. You've got some homework with this workbook, and after this series is over, and it's on helping you develop the skills that we're going to talk about with closing and objections. We also need to become better communicators, another thing we want to talk about on this series. We need to get better at our overall communication skills. Some of us seem to be born with this natural talent, able to communicate, able to get in, make friends with people real quick, able to hear and see everything that's going on in a presentation, and some of us just go through this blindly out here and don't have a clue what's going on. Well, if you understand how we communicate, it'll help you an awful lot. So we're going to go through some basic communication skills. And the third thing we'll cover on this section is how to spot your customers' buying signals. You know, if we're going to learn to close, it'd be handy to close at the right time instead of the wrong time. I watch salespeople. Customer will get back off a demonstration drive, and the salesperson will say, well, what'd you think? Customer will cross their arms and say, well, that's all right. And the salesperson turn around and ask them a closing question. What's wrong with this? What was wrong with... That's all right. We got to get away from doing that. We have to learn when it's time to close and when we really shouldn't close. You have to pick the time to close, and you have to pick the proper close for the situation. Turn over to page 18, and let's first look at knowledge versus skills. Page 18, knowledge versus skills. And again, there's a big difference between gaining knowledge and developing skills. First of all, there on page 18, number 1, the blank. There are hundreds of minor and major skills you need to develop if you're going to turn pro in this business and earn professional wages. Hundreds of minor and major skills. Now, they're an example of different levels of skills you need. We would call a minor skill something like filling out an appraisal slip. It's almost a no-brainer. It says name, address, phone number, miles, ID number, tag number, license plate number. We would call that a minor skill. That's one that's pretty easy. You can fill that out. Maybe some of you can fill out an appraisal slip in less than 2 weeks. The second one down there, a more important skill, would be learning how to fill out a customer statement. See, that's not as easy as an appraisal slip. You have to work through some minor objections from your customer to get the information that you need. You need to learn how to get accurate information, not just say, how much do you earn? You need to learn to pull out how much they actually earn. You need to watch for red flags. So a customer statement is a little more in-depth than a minor skill. The third one down there, an even more important skill, would be learning how to use that appraisal slip, learning how to use that customer statement along with your write-up to help you finalize, close, and negotiate a successful win-win for the dealership and the customer. So minor skills, a little more important skills, and major skills. We have a lot of major skills we have to develop. And again, I can teach you some closing questions. I can teach you some methods to handle objections. But if you do a lousy job in your presentation in that skill level, if you're just using minor skills there, it's going to be tough to close sales later. So you really have to get better at everything. B, there are some of the major skills you need to develop. And I just want to touch on these lightly. Now, part of our selling process, part of the basic steps, Building reports, part of the basic steps. And by the way, there are many more. I just listed as many as I can squeeze on the page here. Building rapport is important because that's where we develop that like part of the buying process. They like you, listen, believe, and then buy. So we build rapport. Second one down there, we investigate. Then we have to learn to present. And it says presenting FAB. That's features, advantages, benefits. A lot of us tell everybody everything we know about the car, but there's a difference between covering and giving a feature presentation and giving a feature, advantage, benefit presentation. A feature presentation. Bob, the car's loaded. It's got everything you want. Feature, advantage, benefit presentation is where you slow things down a little bit and you explain the feature, which is what it is. Let's say Bob's looking for a car for his daughter and he's concerned about safety. You cover the feature, safety, the feature disc brakes. Bob, this little car's got disc brakes. That's the feature. That's what it is. The advantage to Bob is what it does. Bob, disc brakes stop you quicker. The benefit to Bob is what he gets out of it, why he cares. So let's take this a little faster. Bob, this little car's got disc brakes. You know, we kind of take them for granted, but they stop you a lot quicker. And with your daughter in the car, I know safety was important to you, wasn't it? So feature, advantage, benefit selling. Demonstrating, negotiating, follow-up prospecting, referral prospecting, using the telephone, closing continually throughout your presentation, getting a commitment to own before you negotiate, bypassing objections, clarifying objections, rephrasing objections, closing on objections, staying off price, closing in the negotiation to set up a win-win. Major skills. Now, some of us have been doing this for 10 years and haven't really developed our skill level in any of these areas. If we're going to do this another 10 years, it'd be handy to start, even if you only developed a skill a month or a skill every 60 days. At least a year from now, you'd have 6 good skills. If you don't develop anything on purpose, a year from now, you'll just have 6 more months of experience. Times 2, you'll have years of experience doing the same old thing. Let's look at some sort of easy ways to develop skills on page 19. At the top of the page there, it says 4 quick and fairly easy ways to develop your skills. At the beginning of this series, and I think on a couple tapes ago, I talked about reviewing this, taking notes, writing things down. 2A, review. If you want to develop skills faster, then you need to review the information. How many times should you review this tape? And just offhand, if you just listen to this tape, if you've not been taking notes like we talked about, if you haven't been filling in the blanks, I don't know if you understand what percentage of this you'll remember. You get about 10% of it. Now, on the other hand, if I could get you to review this, if you reviewed this tape, if you watched one tape of this and you watched that same tape 5 times in 5 days, you'd get about 50% of it. Now, you can improve that retention and what you get out of it by reviewing it more often. Too many of us watch a tape once and we say, oh, I already watched that one. We didn't learn that much from that one viewing. It takes repetition and review to develop skills. 2B, repetition. Repetition is how we learn things. That's why your kids go to school for a whole year to just learn ABCs. Next year they learn to put words together. Next year they learn to put sentences together. We spend a year doing basic math. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Oh yeah. C, homework. Just like when you're trying to learn math, if you do your homework, you learn it quicker. This class comes with homework. There's some things that I'll help you do that will help you develop your skills, but I need you to participate. Again, just listening, you'll miss a lot. D, practice. Practice, drill, and rehearse. Practice, drill, and rehearse. I have a lot of ex-professional football players that I talk to who are dealers, managers, salespeople. I was talking to one day, and we were talking about practice, and I asked this guy, I said, as a professional football player, how often do you guys practice? He said, that's all we ever do. He said, we play football about once a week. The rest of the time we spend our days practicing. He said, in fact, I've been practicing since I was 4 years old. He said, all I've ever done is get ready for the game. Well, in sales, if you want to get better, we need to practice. And you don't practice on customers. You practice on your spouse, your husband, your wife, your kids, the garbage can, on other salespeople. You practice on your manager in a sales meeting. You role play back and forth. Instead of talking in a huddle about what won't work, go out there and talk about what will work. Practice, review, repetition, do your homework, and you'll sell a lot more cars and make a lot more money. There's 4 tips I would give you on practicing. And again, we'll include this information in your homework section. Number 1, role play with somebody else. Role play these closing skills we're going to teach you. Role play these questions. Role play them so many times that you don't have to think about what you're going to say next when you're talking to a customer. I was talking to a salesman one day in class, and we were talking about investigating, and he said, well, one of the keys to selling is to listen. And this guy said, well, raise his hand. He said, well, how do I listen when I'm trying to figure out what to say next. Well, if you're trying to figure out what to say next, you can't listen. You have to have practiced what to say next so many times, no matter what response you get from the customer, you're ready with an answer, ready with a response, a close, an objection method. We need to practice this so much, selling becomes a no-brainer, if you want to call it that. I need to be able to respond immediately to a stimulus from a customer. They say, we'll think it over. I need to have that answer right there. I can't think about it. I can't review. Wait a minute, folks. Let me review my homework here. Let's see. You want to think it over. Maybe that was on the other section. That won't work. They'll be gone. The salesperson down the street's already got your commission for you. Figure out what to say. Practice, drill, and rehearse. Number 2, make a practice tape. Your homework with this series so that we can help you develop these skills. Part of your homework is going to be to take the questions that we talk about, the selling questions, the methods. Your homework is going to be to take those and turn them into your own practice tape. I'm going to have you write out 30 ways to ask this question. Then I'm going to have you write out 30 ways to answer another question and to ask another question. And I'm going to ask you to read those words. Now they're in your words. They won't use my words anymore. You're going to write them out in your own words, your own different ways you say things. I say y'all, you may say you guys. So you need to change my words to your words, write them out. Then I'm going to ask you to read them into a tape recorder. And when you read them in the tape recorder, I want you to practice tone and inflection and delivery, not just read the words, beautiful day out, isn't it? I want you to practice it so that you deliver it. Beautiful day out, isn't it? So that you deliver it with confidence and enthusiasm. And then I want you to listen to your tape on your way to work each day. I want you to hear yourself practicing, and I want you to leave a pause between each one of those questions you read on tape, because I want you to repeat that out loud as you're driving down the street. Now, people are going to look at you funny. They pull up next to you at a light. Your tape says, beautiful day out, isn't it? And you're going, beautiful day out, isn't it? And who's the lucky one? Who gets a car? You or somebody else? And you're going to repeat, who's the lucky one? Who gets a car? You or somebody else? But if I can get you to do that for 30 days, then you'll have those questions down pat. See, I made the mistakes trying to develop selling skills. When I first started doing, when I first got back in sales, I read and I read and I read and I read and I listened to tapes and I listened to tapes and I went to seminars and listened, but I never said the words. If I can get the words coming out of your mouth, you'll learn your skills much faster. Number 3, you want to have some fun, videotape your performance. Almost everybody's got a video camera at home. Nothing bad happens. Set it up in the corner of the room. People will be in the back of the room maybe laughing at you, maybe helping you, but it doesn't matter. What you're looking for is not just what you say, but how you say things. And you want to have somebody monitor your performance and grade you, if you will. Number 4, maybe one of the most important directions on developing skills. Stay away from all the other average salespeople at the dealership. I don't know if you realize it, but you're doing skill development programs in that little huddle out there. The problem is, now, when I use 6-car, 8-car, 10-car people, don't misunderstand. Nice people, hard workers, good folks, I understand that. They have good intentions, they work long, and they work hard. But when we talk about results, if you hang around a 6-car a month salesperson, you're going to learn how to sell 20 cars, you're going to learn how to sell 6 cars. Now I hear a lot of people say, nah, I hang around those guys, but I don't pay any attention. I let it go in one ear and out the other. You let it go in one ear and you let most of it go out the other, but some of it gets hung up in there. And that's where you start to develop negative attitudes. That's where you start to learn the reasons why you can't sell more cars. The market, the weather, the economy. See, new guys, when you first start out, don't know nothing about nothing, haven't talked to the old-timers yet, you don't know that you can't sell a car because it's Christmas, or you can't sell a car because it's raining, or you can't sell a car because it's summer and people need to buy clothes for their kids. New people don't have any of that limiting information. They're able to go out and do what anybody else says can't be done. Stay away from the average people, unless you want to earn average wages. Page 20, there's a list of skills that I put here, and there's a little blank beside each one, and we're not going to go through each of these. The major skills are the basics, closing, follow-up, paperwork, objections, price, phones, prospecting, and personal sales management. Now, part of personal sales management would be that tracking and goal setting we talked about. You've got to get yourself ready. Out beside each one of these, there's a little blank, and I'd like to ask you to rate yourself in each area from 1 to 10. Now, 1 would be low, 10 would be high. In fact, I'd probably recommend that you make a copy of this page, or just rate yourself first on a blank sheet of paper. And the reason I'd suggest you do that the first time is go ahead and highball yourself, get it out of your system, so that you can go back and rate yourself accurately and honestly. It's like the tracking that we talked about before. It's like as a closer. If I ask most salespeople to rate themselves as a closer, how are you at closing? Most people would say, oh, somewhere between 1 and 10, I'm a 6, I'm a 7. Some people say I'm a 9. What they're referring to is they're good at getting in there and grinding out a deal. If we were going to look at your true closing rating, wouldn't we look at the percentage of people that you deliver? 20%? If you're delivering 20% of the people, you're a 2 out of 10 as far as closing goes. Nothing wrong with that. And what you want to do is find out where you are so that you can improve it. If I talk to 50 people and I'm closing 20%, that's 10. If I raised my closing ratio, if I could admit that I'm only closing 2 out of 10 people, if I could admit that and raise my closing ratio to 30%, if I talk to 50 people, how many cars would I sell? I'd sell 3 times 5, that'd be 15. A 50% improvement for a very minor improvement in my closing ratio. But you know, if I go telling everybody that I'm already closing 40, 50%, I'll never get better at closing. I'll stay on this highball. You don't get more successful by highballing yourself. Now, you can highball everybody in the meeting, you can highball them out there when you're talking in a huddle, but when you go home and you sit down and do this rating, do it honestly and be as hard on yourself as you can, realistic, because what we want to do is find your weakest areas. A, at the top of the page, rate yourself. B, at the bottom of the page, write in your 3 weakest areas from the list above. And especially these on what we're talking about on this tape series. We're going to talk about objections, we're talking about closing, we'll talk about how to stay off price on the lot. We'll talk about the things that'll make you sell more cars and make you an awful lot more money. But need you to write down your 3 weakest areas, and we want to get to work on those. And over there at the right, it also says put the date you'll begin to improve yourself. And if you use our planners on the monthly page, if you remember there, it asks you each month what skill you want to work on. Just check off one of those skills on your monthly planner. Page 21, let's look at some basic communication skills. Another very misunderstood subject. 21, basic communication skills. A lot of salespeople think telling is selling. They think you just talk and talk and talk and tell everybody everything you know and then you try to close a sale. That's not how communication works. In fact, if we look at 3 areas, number 1, the words that we use. What % of effective communication comes from just the words you use? Is it a little or a lot? A guy in class the other day said, well, 90%. No, go all the way to the other end. About 7% comes from the words we use. Number 2, when we talk about communication, 38% of communication comes through tone and inflection. It's how you say the words. You can say the words, Bob, that's a pretty car. You can say it in monotone. Bob, that's a pretty car. You can say it over and over till you're tired of saying it. To Bob, there's no enthusiasm in your voice. Your tone and inflection not correct. If you say, Bob, boy, is that a pretty car. Now we use tone and inflection along with the words. More effective communication. Now if you throw in some body language, number 3, 55% of our communication comes through body language. So we communicate not by just what we say, but how we say it, and also with our body language, the things we say and do. It's like the example I gave, the guy crosses his arms. Don't ask him a closing question. The body language says, my mind is closed, I'm not listening to what you're saying, I'm rejecting what you're saying. We certainly don't want to ask a closing question when somebody's saying, don't ask me a closing question. It's like in the middle of the page there, number 2, tone and inflection. And we'll make this your homework after this tape is over. Practice this. Number 2 there, it says, use the sentences below for practice. What I want you to do is get used to tone and inflection. On your practice tape, you're going to need to practice tone and inflection in delivery. Well, it's like this first sentence down here. Bob, are you saying that she has to look at it before you can make a decision? Bob, are you saying she has to look at it before you can make a decision? If we just say that flat monotone, the question can mean, Bob, are you saying she has to look at it before you make a decision? What does that question say with just that flat monotone? It's just a question, Bob, does she have to look at it? Let's change our inflection on a couple words. Take the words in italics. The first one there is you. Let's change the whole focus of the sentence by leaning on the word you. Bob, are you saying that she has to take a look at it before you can make a decision? Bob, are you saying? That means, Bob, you got to make a decision here. Are you saying that you can't do this without her? Let's change the tone on the next one. Bob, are you saying that she has to look at it before you can make a decision? It's a little different question than just Bob, you saying she has to look at it. Bob, are you saying she has to look at it before you can make a decision? Didn't I just say, can't we sell it to you, and then maybe you can just talk to her on the telephone about it? Bob, are you saying to look at it, she has to look at it before you can make a decision? Every time you change the inflection on one of those words, you change the focus of the sentence. Bob, are you saying that she has to look at it before you can make the decision? It's like, step up, Bob, you're a big boy, make a decision. And you say that with the same words, but by changing your tone and inflection. After we get through with this, go around the room there in the dealership and practice some of this. Take that sentence, go around the room, change the inflection, and see how you change the question that goes along with it. Another thing we have to do if we're going to communicate effectively is we have to watch the words that we use. We're going to learn to close, we're going to learn to handle objections, but we don't want to add any objections. There's some words that you use that create problems throughout the sale. We call these rejection words. On page 22, bad luck words and phrases. We don't want to use bad luck words, we want to use good luck words. The first three blanks there on the page says selling is causing a person to think, act, and feel positive. Selling is causing a person to think, act, and feel positive. That means we want to get them excited about owning the car. Now, if we use the wrong words, we not only don't get them excited, we turn them off. Let's look at some of the words that we call rejection words. Buy, sell, and sold. I don't know if you realize it, but people don't like to buy things. They don't want you to sell it to them, and they hate thinking you sold it to them. Well, that guy sold me a car. Sounds like I had nothing to do with it. Instead of saying, Bob, is this car you'd like to buy? What can we say? You're right, Bob, is this car you'd like to own? Congratulations. Let's switch buy for own. Number 2 down here, the second one, pay and payment. Now we've heard the words for these. Instead of, do you want to pay for it? What would you like your payments to be? What other words could we use? Invest, I heard that. When I was writing this workbook, I tried to sit down and figure out what I say when I'm using the word payments. I try not to talk price on the lot at all, which means I don't talk payments on the lot. So I don't say, Bob, on the lot, your payments or your monthly investment's going to run. I don't talk about it out there. I don't talk about payments till I'm inside doing my write-up. And when I get to the payments part, I say, Bob, with your car and $2,200 down, this thing's going to run you. I just generally say, it's going to run you. I try not to say payments or investment. Bob, looks like it's going to run you $350 to $400. Is that about what you had in mind? Just, it's going to run you. Anything but pay and payments. Next one down there, in fact, the next two in order, sign the contract. Since I was a kid, and probably you felt the same way and were taught the same thing, my parents said, don't sign any contracts unless you read it. Instead of triggering that red flag when we say sign the contract, what could we use instead of sign? I heard somebody say approve, okay, authorize, let me have your John Henry on the check mark. Anything but sign the contract. What words could we use instead of contract? Paperwork, agreement. When I'm closing, I use paperwork and agreement a lot, especially the word paperwork. When I close, I say, come on in, let's wrap this up and take care of the paperwork. People know that paperwork means do all that stuff that goes along with buying a car. Wrap it up means let's go inside and take care of all the stuff that we have to do. Too many of y'all say, well, let's go inside and fiddle with some figures and we'll get you signed up on a contract, get you out of here, keep your payments. And you use all the words that create resistance. As soon as you say sign up a contract, resistance, it comes in. It doesn't go away, you add it. Next one down here, allowance for your trade. Or excuse me, I skipped one, credit application. What's a better word than credit app? Customer statement. Allowance for your trade. Now, when you were a kid and got allowance, was it ever enough? So, remembering that allowances are never enough, when you're talking to a customer, do you want to say, Bob, we're going to allow you $2,200 for your car? Is that going to make them happy or unhappy? Let's switch allowance for your trade to, you're right, I heard it, market value for your car. Let's use market value for the trade and our car. Instead of asking price. First of all, what's wrong with asking price? What's wrong with the words asking price? That's kind of like we'd like to get. It implies you never expect to get it. So let's switch asking price for, again, market value. Or I just use its. Have you noticed how often people, you got the window sticker right here, guy standing here. Have you noticed how often they look right at the window sticker and say, Joe, how much is this thing? I just say, Bob, it's price, you can't see it from there. It's $17.3 or whatever the price is. Why don't we? I hear a lot of people close with, why don't we go inside and see what we can do? Why don't we say, give me all the reasons you can think of for not doing this? Why don't you give me all the reasons you can think of for not coming inside with me there, Bob? Why don't we change that to, instead of why don't we go inside, how about, you're right, let's go inside. Let's go inside and take care of the paperwork. Appointment, it's another one of those words. Who do you make appointments with? Doctors, dentists, IRS agents, accountants, people who cause you pain. So I wouldn't suggest that you say, let's make an appointment for Saturday morning. They go, oh, they flinch from that pain they know they're going to get. Instead, what could we say? Instead of saying, let's make an appointment for Saturday morning, how about let's get together Saturday morning. You guys are doing pretty good, especially over video. You're wrong. That's another thing. If you want to light somebody up real quick, tell them they're wrong. You tell Bob it's 17.3 and he says, that's too much. Get in that hum all about it and say, no, it isn't. You don't even know what you're talking about. That'll light them up. That'll make it tougher. There's 3 words you need to learn: feel, felt, and found. That's too much money. Bob, I understand how you feel. In fact, I felt the same way, too, when I first got in the car business, until I realized that most of the increases we've had the last few years have been improvement costs. Let me show you some of the improvements on the new Ford Escort, Chevy Camaro, whatever it is you're going to look at. Today, and we're going to talk about closing after a while. What's wrong with the word today when we're closing? When we're negotiating, we're inside negotiating. You go back and forth with your manager, say, Bob, if we can do this today, will you take it? How many of you lost a deal because of the word today? What's a better word? Now. I've closed the sale, and people said, I go back in and I said, okay, I got it done just the way you want. He said, okay, I'll check back with you. So wait a minute, you said you'd take it today. Today is not over till what, 10 o'clock for you guys? I'll go check, see if somebody can beat the price. They can't, I'll come back today and buy it. So we need to switch today for now. Honestly, truthfully, can I be honest? You got to get rid of that stuff. I bought a boat from a guy, and all he could say is, trust me, honestly, truthfully. Well, to be honest with you, I was there waiting, and some people were down at the dock, and some people pulled in, and they were in a little dinghy, and they were just looking for a place to park it. He couldn't even make himself not say, to be honest with you, to answer a simple question. They said, can we park here? And he said, well, to be honest with you, yeah, it's okay. That's crazy. Just drop that. Just be honest. When you say, can I be honest with you, implies that you haven't been up to this point. And don't say, trust me. That's really not a good word for us. When we're negotiating or when we're talking, how far apart are we? That's the negative side of it. What's the positive way of looking at that? You're right. How close are we? Thousands, hundreds, and dollars. Bob, it's 17.3. You didn't hear me say $17,383. It's 17.3. We dropped the hundreds, the thousands, and the dollars. If it's 21,212, it's a little over 21. It's just under 19. It's a tad over 10. Just over 6. Drop the hundreds, the thousands, and the dollars. They make it sound more expensive. Your car isn't worth it. Well, that's always good. You're asking a little more than market value might be a better way to put it. Instead of, whoa, your car's just not worth it. Remember that statistic we talked about before? Once you give somebody a trade figure, of the ones who leave without buying, 96% left because of that trade figure. It's really not a good idea to say, well, that little sled you pulled up in, save the negative words. Thank you. Now, there's nothing wrong with the word thank you. It's just when we talk about conditioned response, when I say thank you, what's the conditioned response? You're welcome. When I say congratulations, what's the conditioned response? Thank you. Now, the reason I have this in here, when I'm delivering a car, the last thing I want to say to a customer as they're driving off the lot, if I say, Bob, thank you for your business, he's going to respond with, Joe, you're welcome. If I, on the other hand, as he's driving off the lot, say, Bob, congratulations, enjoy your new car, he's going to say, Joe, thank you very much for helping me. I'd like to send him down the street with him thanking me instead of me thanking him. I'll thank him earlier in my delivery process. Somewhere in there I'll say, Bob, thank you very much for your business. We appreciate it. And congratulations, enjoy that car. I want to get the last thank you from him. And the last one there on the page, trade slang. You got to quit using trade slang. If you got somebody new in the room, ask them what EFI, ABS, SRS, hole in the roof, brass hat. We got to quit using all those words. Bob, that little sled you pulled up in's got no guts, and our new cars have EFI and all the toys. If we can work it out today the way you want to buy it, can I sell it to you? No wonder we don't sell anything. We talk in code. People don't understand our little code words. And the problem with that is when we talk about objections, if you say a word they don't understand, the problem is you keep talking, but their mind sticks back with that word. Bob, what do you mean by brass hat? I don't know. And why would we want to save $4,000 on a brass hat? Or an executive car or a program car? So drop the trade slang. Get a bucket, put it in the sales office, and every time you hear somebody cussing or using trade slang, throw a quarter in it. And at the end of the week, have pizza and beer. First week, you can probably feed the homeless with all the things that you throw a quarter in there for. By the second week, you'll probably be down to a couple of big pizzas and a six-pack. By the third week, you'll be lucky if you get a slice and a beer. Work these negative words out of your vocabulary. Every time you catch yourself using one of these, throw a quarter in the bucket. Some better words to use than these. When we talk about closing, if you want to make it easier, use words that build that emotion we're talking about. Remember, selling is causing people to think, act, and feel positive. So when we talk about closing more, let's use better words, the ones that get people excited. On page 23, at the top of the page, What's that one? You what? You deserve it. Bob, you deserve a new car. Besides that, number 2, it's time to reward or treat yourself and your family. Bob, you deserve a new car. It's time to reward yourself. Besides that, number 3, you've earned it. You've worked hard, so reward yourself. Number 4, somebody's going to use it for business. This new car will open new doors for you in business. When you pull up in a parking lot and they see how successful you are, boy, it's going to be easier to get clients. Besides that, in business, number 5, in business and life and attitude is everything. And this car will make you feel like $1 million. You show this off to all your neighbors, boy, it's going to make you feel like $1 million. Besides that, they're going to be jealous, aren't they? And you're just going to eat that stuff up, aren't you? We also need to, there's some other kind of words we use. You need to go back and read your brochures. And this isn't in your workbook, but there's another kind of words. They're called glamour words. When I started selling cars, we had Corinthian leather. Now, it's just regular old leather as far as I can determine, but Corinthian makes it sound so much more valuable. It's like when you say, Bob's looking for a car and he wants cruise control and he wants a tilt wheel, and he says he's been down at the other store and one of your competitors, and he comes down to your place and you're covering cruise control. Glamour words are descriptive adjectives. Most people explain cruise control as, Bob, car's got cruise. I believe your brochure explains it as a multifunction speed control system with memory. So, Bob, you know, this little Ford Mustang here has got a multifunction speed control system with memory. He goes, whoa, down at the other place, they only had a cruise control. Tell me about this thing. Now, we kind of laugh about it, but it's our job to build as much value as we can in this car and in each feature so that we can go ahead and sell it and get the money that we need. Remember, if you want to get $20,000 for a car, you need to give a $30,000 presentation. So switch your words. It's not a tilt wheel. It's an adjustable steering column. It's a 6-way adjustable steering column. It's not a 6-way seat. It's a 6-way adjustable seat with power lumbar support for driver and passenger. That sounds a little more valuable than, oh, it's got power seats. So learn to use those words. Last thing we want to cover is buying signals. We're going to use our words. We're going to eliminate the negative words. We're going to try to get people more excited. We need to learn to spot buying signals so that we ask when it's the right time. Now, let's say that you were sitting down in the back seat and you're on your demonstration drive and Bob and Betty are driving the car. You're sitting back there twiddling your thumbs. Betty's already driven it. She liked it. Bob looks over at Betty and he says, boy, I think this is the car for us. What do you think, hon? She says, oh, it's great. Would those be the positive buying signals you'd be looking for? Absolutely. When do you close? You close when it's time to close. Even if you're in the back seat driving around on a demonstration drive, you pull out a business card and your pen and say, well, sounds like we found a perfect car. Now, Betty, were you going to let Bob be on the title, or you're just going to put this in your name? And you start closing. Then when he comes back into the dealership, you say, Bob, go ahead and park it in the soul line over there, and we'll pull the keys so nobody else can drive your new car. Betty, grab me the pink slip out of your car. If they do all those things, didn't they just agree to buy? You picked the right time, you used the right questions, and you followed it through with other commitments. So we have to learn to close. To do that, we need to learn to spot their buying signals. Now, kind of like communications, there's a couple of ways we can spot buying signals. Page 24, top of the page there, verbal. There's some things people say that let you know they're getting closer. Number 1, more questions overall. When they start asking you general questions, what's the warranty on this thing? Do you guys have loaner cars? Can my wife get a ride home when she brings the car in for service? Is getting parts a problem? How do they do this undercoating stuff? If they weren't interested, they wouldn't ask you anything. By asking you any questions at all shows a general interest in your product. So if they're asking you questions, that means they're sort of interested. Number 2, if they narrow their focus with their questions down and ask you specific questions about buying, then that means they're getting closer. Specific questions about buying. How long does it take to put a bumper on? Can you guys install the radio today? Can we get this in blue? How long does it take to get out of the finance department? What do you think about this, dear? I kind of like it. Those are all more specific questions. And number 3, when they talk as though they already owned it, and they say, boy, when I get this thing home, I'm going to have the kids wash it, we're going to take a trip. Or as soon as I get this, I'm going to change those pinstripes, put some blue ones on there. Or I'm going to put some tires and wheels on this thing. Or gosh, we've got to get that other kind of bumper hitch on the back of this. I remember down at ABC Trailer Rentals, they had, when they start talking as though they owned it, you're getting real close to making a sale. And like, remember, we communicate through body language. You also need to watch what they're doing. The bottom of the page, visual. Have you noticed when couples come on the lot, they're about this far apart? They're not necessarily hugging and holding hands and laughing and joking. Tense time. Last time they bought a car, it wasn't any fun. They're going to pay more than they want to spend. They're not going to get as much for their trade as they'd like to get. And it just hasn't been fun. So they're not having fun. They're visibly not having fun. Now, they may not be mad, but they're just not excited yet. Have you noticed the closer you get to selling, the better job you do, the closer they get? As they get closer, when they start smiling, when they hold hands, when they start kidding around, if they came in apart, the closer they get, let that be a clue. They're getting closer to buying. There's a couple other things you can watch, just common things that we see all the time. You're trying to close a sale, and you're across the desk, you're in the negotiation stage, and the lady's sitting over there, and she's got a purse. Now, if it's under her arm and she's clutching it, if we look at body language, does that say I trust you or I don't trust you yet? Does that say I'm comfortable or I'm not comfortable yet? If she throws it on the floor, a little more comfortable. It's like on a demonstration drive. Some of you guys remember this. Just you and a woman driving a car. You're in the driver's seat, she's in the passenger seat, you pull over to trade drivers. Nobody in the world but you and her. She's got her purse laying on the floor. How many times have you gotten out of the other side, she was getting out, looked back, saw her purse, reached in and grabbed it, and carried her purse around the car out in the middle of nowhere with only you and her there? Did she just say by her body language that I'm comfortable yet or I'm still a little uncomfortable? On the other hand, I've been in the back seat, lady driving with a friend of hers or something, she's thrown me her purse and said, here, hold this. That says I trust you. People's body language will tell you what they're doing. And again, you need to watch that as you're presenting. If Bob comes in and says, I want a red Camaro, and you're down looking at the red one, and Betty's following you, and you notice out of your corner of your eye that she stops and looks at that real pretty blue one. If the red one doesn't have what you want on it, since we've supposed to have been watching what's going on, what car would you show them next? I forgot, what percent of the decisions are influenced by the woman in the group, wife, spouse, whatever? So it sounds like you need to look at the blue one next. Bob will end up taking home whatever Betty wants him to. And you need to keep your eyes and your ears open. We just touched on some skills. Again, this class is on closing and objections. We've touched on some of the other skills that are going to be important, that are going to affect the close. They're going to affect your ability to overcome the objections that you get. We talked about learning these and how long the learning process takes. You're going to need to do some homework. You're going to need to practice, drill, and rehearse. You're going to need to make that audio tape. You're going to need to videotape your presentation. You're going to need to role play out in that huddle out there. Instead of talking about what won't work, talk about what will work. There's a lot of things that you need to do to get better at selling, and it starts with developing skills. When we come back, we're ready to get into closing, and one of the first things I want to do is answer some of the most common questions I get on closing the sale. I want to talk about that and some of the biggest mistakes that salespeople make as they try to close sales. So you guys review your tape, start planning on your homework, and I'll see you on the next series.
This concludes this segment of your training program. As Joe says, the key to your success in learning to close more sales and hold gross is to practice, drill, and rehearse the techniques he's giving you in this training series. And don't forget, be sure to complete the homework assignment for this tape before you go on to the next tape. Good luck on the quiz, too, and we'll see you in the next tape.